Hello everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. We'll get started in around 2 minutes. Still expecting a few more people to join. Okay, maybe we can get started. So thanks a lot everyone for joining this webinar. We are recording this meeting. So we'll be sharing the recording with all of you, hopefully by tomorrow evening. So in case you miss some point, no need to worry. You can rewatch the recording again. Okay, so let's get started. Um, we are Team Videsh, and the main goal of today's webinar is to teach you how to write an impactful statement of purpose. Let me start sharing my screen again. Okay, I hope my screen is visible to everyone now.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so we have conducted many such webinars on grad school applications in this year and in previous year as well. And my name is Dr. Raj. Here's my twin brother, Dr. Rajat, and our very close friend for the past 10 plus years now, Dr. Sreedath. We all graduated from IIT Madras in 2017, and then we applied for grad school. So at the time of our applications, we got admits at universities like MIT, Stanford, Purdue, UIUC, CMU, Michigan, etc. And then me and Sreedath completed our PhDs from MIT, and Rajat completed his PhD from Purdue. During our application process, it was a big struggle for us because we did not receive streamlined guidance from anyone. We had to talk to a lot of seniors and we had to figure out everything ourselves. The reason we organize such webinars is that we can pass on this information to you in a much more streamlined manner so that it will help all of you in your applications. If you have any doubts or questions, I encourage you to ask these questions in the chat so that we can cover these questions as the webinar proceeds. One more thing which I would like you all to fill out is this form so that we get to know you and your profile a bit better. So I'm just sharing a link to this form in the chat right now. Can you just go to this form and fill out this? It will give us a sense of whether you have started writing your statement of purpose, etc. Okay. So our main goal is to help you reach your dream university and provide advice and provide such kind of guidance, which is very creative, modern. And the reason we have written modern is that we always stay in touch with students who have received admits to top universities recently. And we incorporate that into our webinars. Secondly, it's highly effective and condensed advice, which would really add value to your life. Even today's session will be extremely informative in which we'll be talking about and even showing you the SOPs which got us admits into MIT and Stanford so that you can really start writing an SOP which gets you to your dream university. So why this workshop? The main reason is that when we looked at SOPs of candidates who got admits into top universities, we realized that writing an SOP is a skill and that skill can be taught. When we wrote our SOP, there was no real set of guidelines regarding how to write an SOP which got you admits into top universities. But now since we have seen so many SOPs, we have looked at patterns which top candidates have in their SOPs. And these are the patterns which we want to share with all of you today. So there will be 6 different aspects in today's workshop. We'll start with what is an SOP, then the 4 key elements which make an ideal SOP. Then we will actually show you the show you the SOPs which got us admits at these top universities. And then we will give you insights as to how you can begin writing your own SOP. And finally, we'll talk a bit about the SciML bootcamp. So first, let me go to this form. I hope many students have filled this form right now. So here, let us see the summary regarding how many students have started writing an SOP. So it's an equal split, which is usually common in all of our webinars. About half of the people have started writing an SOP and about half of you have not. And if 22 of you are planning to apply for fall 2025, this is high time when you should start writing your statement of purpose. Because if you start writing it right now, it will take at least 1.5 months for you to finish your SOP, and the deadlines are in December. So don't delay starting the SOP much further than right now. If you have not started writing your SOP after this session, please go and make your first draft of the SOP. It's really high time now, especially for all those people who are applying for fall 2025. So what is really a statement of purpose? The simplest way to describe an SOP is that it's that essay which you write to the admissions committee. And the purpose of the SOP is that you have to convince the admissions committee that you are the right candidate for the university and for that program. Your essay has to convince the admissions committee. So in a sense, writing an SOP is a storytelling exercise. It's much different than getting grades, getting a GPA, because those are objective metrics which are fixed. Even two profiles who have a less GPA and one who has a high GPA, there can be a big difference in the way the statement of purpose is written, and all of it comes down to the story. An SOP is very subjective in nature, and that's why we need to write it very, very carefully. It's probably the most important document in your application process. So, in my experience, there are 3 main things which you can do in your SOP. First of all, you can tell your story. All of us have different stories. There are strengths, there are weaknesses, there are times when we have struggled, and there are times when we have overcome these struggles. SOP is the only place where you can write about your unique story. Second, of course, it gives you your chance to showcase your strengths. Many people do this second point correctly, but very few people do this third point correctly. SOP is that only document which allows you to convert your weaknesses into points of strength. Let's say if you have a low CGPA in one particular semester, or let's say if you have taken a gap year, or you have been working in the industry so long that you're detached from academia, and now you're thinking, how can I apply to grad school? Or let's say your major field is physics, but you want to apply to computer science or machine learning. So all of these might be perceived as weaknesses. But what top candidates do is that they convert these weaknesses into points of strength. And I'm going to demonstrate how you can do this for all the weaknesses which I mentioned to you right now. So remember that SOP is not just useful for showcasing your strengths, it's also an extremely useful document to convert your weaknesses into points of strengths. Now, as I mentioned, let's come to the first point, which is telling your story. SOP is the document where you are a storyteller and you have to sell your story in the best way possible. Who are you selling your story to? You're selling it to the admissions committee. So really writing your SOP comes down to this question that how can you sell the best possible story? So we like to give this banana analogy a lot. So let's look at this banana on the left hand side. It has some spots, and this is usually all of our profiles. No profile is perfect, right? There are weaknesses in every profile. Then we have seen some SOPs in which students sell their profile as if they have not done too many things, and they sell the same profile in an underconfident manner by writing things like, I was not sure, then this is a weakness in my application, but I did this, etc. These kind of underconfident statements make your SOP not very strong. Whereas top SOPs, what they do is they acknowledge weaknesses in their profile and they convert these weaknesses into points of strength. So even if your actual profile has weaknesses and you know it internally, the way you write your SOP, the way you write your story should be in such a way that although the weaknesses are there, they should be perceived as a point of strength. And this is where the true art of writing the statement of purpose comes into the picture. So one takeaway which all of you should take from this webinar is that you should be good storytellers. Don't just focus on your weakness, on the weaknesses in your profile. Start thinking about how you can display the banana as something like on the right hand side. Then the main thing is that, okay, I'm saying that SOP requires you to be a good storyteller, right? Then how to tell a great story? There are three things which are very important. The first thing to keep in mind is that we have done several experiences, and some of it, when you write the story, it may happen that one experience needs to be told before, where, whereas that experience might not have happened before in real life. So no need to follow a chronological order in the SOP. You can write the experiences such that they flow in a good story. Second, be confident, be very confident in every single thing which you write. And third thing which is very important is that you have to convey everything which you write in your SOP with passion. You have to add emotion to the SOP. So you can mention sentences like, I work very hard on this particular problem, and after a lot of hard work, I became indifferent to time, and eventually I got great results, which were then accepted at a publication. This emotion cannot be brought into a resume, but you have to bring it in the SOP so that you sound like a passionate candidate. Then second thing is showcasing your strengths. In the SOPs which we have seen so far, all of these points are very strong points to mention in your SOP. First is of course your GPA, second is publications, internships, work experience, startup experience, and patents. Grades and publications are the two most important things which can be huge points of strength in your application. Even if the grades are not that high, you can compensate for it by having very impactful publications on your profile. Now, as I mentioned, you can use your SOP to convert your weaknesses into strengths, right? How can you do that? Let's say if you have a time gap in your profile, or let's say you have spent too long in industry and now you're concerned about returning to academia. Maybe you can mention it in your SOP that out of the incoming cohort to this particular field or to this particular branch, no one would have the industrial experience like I am having. And that's why I would be a great addition to this year's cohort. Now, see, your same weakness which you thought would hamper your application, you have put it in a way in which it can actually benefit this year's cohort. So you have converted into a point of strength. If you have a cross application or a time gap, you can mention that although I have a time gap, this is the time which I use to develop my skill set in some other areas. And this shows resilience, and this shows that in spite of struggles or setbacks, I managed to later bounce back. So this same thing which can be perceived as a weakness can be converted into points of strength. Similarly, for cross application, if you're a physics student applying to CS, you should ideally develop a lot of projects in the new field in which you are applying to, so that you can say in your profile that although my main field was completely different, I took so much time and effort to learn about this new field. That demonstrates my passion to transition to this new field, and that is proven by the fact that I have projects and I have publications in this new field. So now the same point of cross application, which was a weakness before, has been converted into a very strong point. It has been converted into a point of strength. Then there are some key points, right? Don't just write, always have demonstrations to show or to prove what you have written. So don't just say that I have great experience in this area, I have experience in this, etc. Prove it. Prove it by saying that these are the projects which I have worked on. Here are the results. Here is the impact of this project. Or if you have publications, then that's awesome. Secondly, school days don't matter too much. All that matters is what you have done after you got into undergraduate. And thirdly, don't write too many cheesy sentences like Elon Musk said this or this particular scientist said this. It does not matter too much. As I mentioned, all that really matters is the work you have put in and the results you have got. Now we come to the second part where we analyze the four key elements of an ideal SOP. So as I mentioned, we have looked at 300 to 400 SOPs so far, and we have looked at SOPs of a large number of candidates who have got into top universities. Here are the four common patterns or four common elements which we have seen in all of these SOPs. And you might be thinking, what are these names? So the first is the thread, second is the hook, third is the supporting cast, and fourth is casting the net. Let me explain each of these step by step. So first is the thread. Now, let's say you belong to this category where you have not written an SOP, or this category where you have not written an SOP, or even this category where you have written the first draft of your SOP. Always ask yourself the question, what is the thread of my SOP, which means what is the unifying vision which binds your SOP together. There should be only one thread. This sounds simple, but it's actually a place where candidates make mistakes, because I've seen SOPs where people write, I'm interested in fluid mechanics, computational physics, uh, then something about machine learning. So if you read an SOP like that, it's basically all over the place, right? It's a weak SOP. It's not scattered. It's actually scattered SOP, sorry. It's not focused. You need an SOP which is completely focused towards one single thread. So for example, here are some paragraphs from my SOP which got me admitted into MIT. And whether the admissions committee selects me or not, one thing is pretty clear, that my entire SOP is about creating an impact through fluid mechanics. So that is the thread of my SOP. That's the vision of my application. I want to create an impact through fluid mechanics. So here you see in the first paragraph, I've written that this very pursuit has inspired me to deeply explore the field of fluid mechanics and to create an impact in this field. Later, in another paragraph, I've written a master's degree followed by a PhD at MIT becomes an ideal choice for me to create an impact in fluid mechanics. When I show you my SOP later, you will see that at every single place, I keep on reiterating that my thread is fluid mechanics. So if you have written your SOP, take a look at it and try to ask yourself the question, is there one single thread which binds my entire SOP together? If it is scattered, if there is not one thread but many things you have written, it's a weak SOP. If you are yet to start writing an SOP, the first thing is identify your vision and write it down first on your diary or some notepad, and then start writing your SOP, because it will bind your SOP together. The second point, which is the most important in your SOP, is your hook. A hook is that aspect of your story which is your biggest strength. This is going to distinguish you from the rest of the applicants. So it can either be a conference or a journal publication. It can be a prestigious internship or a fellowship, or of course, it can be your grades. So hook is that point which immediately catches the attention of the admissions committee. So here is the hook in my SOP. It was my journal publication, and I have written it front and center on the first page of my SOP. So here you can see I have written so much about the work which I did to get my journal publication. You remember I mentioned about emotion and how you have to make your SOP a storytelling exercise. So see how what I have written here. I found myself struggling for months at end. I would have conversations with my guide for hours at a stretch. After a year of effort, I was at the forefront of developing a new equation, which was submitted to Journal of Fluid Mechanics. It's impossible to write all of this in the resume, right? But I have given so much passion and emotion to this paragraph that when someone comes at the end of this paragraph, they'll feel that I've put so much effort, and it's evident by this publication. So that was my hook. Remember that grades are fixed after a certain point. So if the grades is not your hook, you have to work hard to cultivate your hook. If you don't have good grades, try publishing a conference or journal paper in the time which is remaining. Try doing impactful projects, make GitHub contributions, make open source contributions, add them to your resume, add them to your SOP. Those are all very good hooks. The third thing is the supporting cast. Basically, all the things which we do in our undergraduate are not related to our thread, right? There are some random things which all of us have done, random yet impactful things. For example, I was applying to fluid mechanics, but I had an internship in installing solar panels. Now, installing solar panels is not related to my thread at all. But here is how I added it in my SOP. I use the sandwich technique. So the sandwich technique is that, let's say if you have some random yet impactful thing, you sandwich it between your thread. So here you can see I've started this paragraph with my thread by saying that a passion for creating an impact led me to two pursuits. And I end this paragraph with my thread. A master's degree followed by PhD at MIT becomes an ideal choice for me to create an impact in the field of fluid mechanics. So I start with my thread, I end with my thread, and in the middle, I sandwich it with the other experience, with the experience which is not really related to my thread. And through this sandwich technique, you can even add some supporting cast elements which are not directly related to your thread. And finally, the most important thing is casting the net. So this is where you have to make your pitch to the admissions committee. Why would you be a good fit to the university? Which research groups in the university you are interested in? So here you can see the last two paragraphs of my SOP. In the second last paragraph of my SOP, I have written about the research groups I'm planning to work with. And I had done a lot of survey, and I'd gone through the university website and the list of these professors and made sure that they really align with my field of research. And the last paragraph is what I want to show you. This is my pitch to MIT. So I've written that I feel that with the experience of doing both experimental and theoretical research and the knowledge gained from doing relevant courses, I would be able to contribute positively to the research output of MIT. So here is where candidates make mistakes. I have seen so many SOPs in which candidates write about what they will get from the university, such as a good faculties or a good peer group, but they don't write about what they will contribute to the university. Remember, it's a two-way street. Of course, the university is helping you, but you have to mention about what you are bringing to the table. What is the value that you as a candidate is going to provide to the university? Don't make this mistake towards the end of not making your pitch and not mentioning about what you will contribute to the university. So this is the last thing, which is casting the net, and you have to make sure that your SOP ends in a very strong manner like this. So overall, let me recap the four elements which make a strong SOP. The first is the thread, the second is the hook, the third is the supporting cast, and fourth is making your pitch. Remember, one thing which I want to stress upon is the hook. If you are listening to this webinar and if you are thinking that I don't have a hook, don't worry about it. You can cultivate the hook. The hooks, as I mentioned, can be publications, they can be projects, they can be internships, startup experiences. Don't worry about your GPA because it's fixed after a certain point, right? We cannot change it too much. But these other things you can develop so that that becomes a strong point on your profile. Now, what we can do is that let's actually analyze my SOP. So I'm going to take you through my SOP right now and show you the different aspects. So let me just open my SOP on the screen so that I can share it with you. Okay, so here is the PDF version of my statement of purpose. And this is the SOP which got me admitted into MIT. So I'm going to show you how the four elements, the thread, the hook, the supporting cast, and the pitch come together in my SOP. So you see, I start by mentioning my thread. I start by saying that I want to create an impact in the field of fluid mechanics. Great. Then I write a bit about how I was introduced to the field of fluid mechanics. And then directly comes my hook. The next two paragraphs are about the journal which I published and the research work which I did in the field of fluid mechanics. So this is my hook, which is the strongest point of my SOP, and I know that when the admissions committee comes until this point, they'll be impressed by my hook because not many people have a publication in Journal of Fluid Mechanics at the undergraduate. If you don't have a publication at this stage, it's fine. These two paragraphs need to be replaced with some other impactful project which you have worked on personally, or some internship which you have done, or some entrepreneurial experience which you have. This is my hook. So you have to hook the admissions committee in your first page itself. Don't take your hook to the second page. It's not very impactful that way. And then I write about the coursework which I had done at MIT. And I also write a bit about advanced courses which I had taken in fluid mechanics. And here comes my supporting cast. So supporting cast is basically the experience which is not related to fluid mechanics. So this is my ITC internship where I had installed solar panels, completely unrelated to fluid mechanics, right? But see, here is how I use the sandwich technique. I started out by saying that I like to create an impact. So that's my thread. And I ended with my thread that I want to create an impact in the field of fluid mechanics. And in the middle, I wrote about my ITC internship and what kind of quantitative impact it had in terms of money saved, etc. So this is my supporting cast. One thing to mention is that if you are applying for PhD, extracurricular and co-curricular activities do not matter too much. They matter if you are applying for masters, but for PhD, it does not really matter too much. I had anyway included one small paragraph here about extracurricular activities and a startup experience I had been a part of. But if you see my entire SOP, it forms a very small part of my SOP. And then finally, these are the last two paragraphs, which is my pitch. So the second last paragraph, I write about the research groups which I'm interested to work with at MIT. And in the last paragraph, I write about what I will bring to the table. Remember, don't make the mistake of not writing what you will contribute. So as I mentioned, I've written here that I have the experience of experimental theoretical research and I have done courses also, advanced courses. That's why I would be able to contribute positively to the research output of MIT. So when someone reaches till the end of my SOP. They know what my hook is. They know I have published papers in this field. They know I have done courses, and they know that I have a strong profile in fluid mechanics. So naturally, my profile becomes attractive for this university, and that's why I was selected at MIT. Similarly, you have to craft your own profile in a manner where the thread, the hook, the supporting cast, and the pitch will all come together in a seamless manner. So when you start writing your SOP, think about first the thread, then think about the hook. Write 2 or 3 paragraphs on your hook, then add about random elements which are still impactful, and then in the last paragraph, make your pitch. I know some SOPs have word limits. The way you can do it is that, or at least the way I did it is that I first made an SOP which is around 1400 words, and then I trimmed it later to satisfy the word count which other universities might require. Okay, so we covered this part where I dissected my SOP and showed you how the thread, the hook, the supporting elements, and the pitch came together. And as I mentioned earlier, I strongly think that I got into MIT because of my SOP. So I'll mention it again. The SOP is a storytelling document, which is the most important document of your application process. And all of you who are applying to fall 2025 need to start working on it right now and get it reviewed from people who have got admits into top universities. You can reach out to us if you want help in crafting your SOP or providing feedback. Now let us come to the next part where we will be analyzing the SOPs of Dr. Rajat and Dr. Sreedath. So I'll stop sharing my screen over here. Okay, is my SOP visible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fine. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through my statement of purpose, which I submitted during my grad school application, and it uh, it follows a format which is very similar to the format which Dr. Raj was explaining. Before I start reviewing the SOP, I have recently reviewed a lot of uh, SOPs where I've seen a common trend of students using large language models like ChatGPT to write some of their initial paragraphs. And whenever I read such SOPs, I immediately I'm not very impressed by these statement of purpose documents because SOP is a document which has to be deeply personal. And if the admission committee recognizes that you have used AI to write down some of these paragraphs, it might hamper your application in a negative way. You can use AI to reframe some of the sentences, but if you write some of the most crucial parts of uh, of your documents using AI, then I would encourage you to refrain from doing that. Try to sound more genuine during your documents and try to make sure that whatever you write, it's coming from your own thoughts basically, and you don't rely too much on artificial intelligence. Okay, so initially in the first paragraph of my SOP, I mention about my thread, which is fundamental understanding of complex dynamic systems by the construction of mathematical models. Now, this is a pretty broad thread. I have not including any specific domains here, and there is a specific reason why I have kept it broad. And the reason is that my bachelor's and master's was in the field of engineering design and automotive engineering. And my passion area was in the field of fluid mechanics, which was completely different from my area of bachelor's. And I wanted to find a way in which I can incorporate all the experience which I have in my bachelor's, as well as I wanted to include my experience of my area of passion as well. So I constructed my thread, which was broad enough and general enough that can include both of these areas. Now, when I write understanding of complex dynamic systems by the construction of mathematical models, it gives me the flexibility of including both these different domains, the domain of automotive engineering as well as the domain of fluid mechanics. So it's like a smart maneuvering of words so that uh, you have uh, you have the scope of writing multiple paragraphs in your document which are impressive and which cater to one or the other field which you have in your experiences. So That was my first paragraph where I mention about my thread, and then I mention I'm deeply inspired to create a significant impact during my PhD. In the next paragraph, I mentioned about how I directly got interested in the field of fluid mechanics, and here I highlight a specific course which I had taken, which my professor had taught me. This way, my story looks very coherent, even though I had taken more than 50, 60 courses during my college. Instead of mentioning all of them, I mention only one single course. The reason is that I want to make the reader hooked onto my story. Uh, I I want to give them a sense that these series of events have happened in a way in my life which has motivated me to pursue PhD in this field. And even though I liked a lot of other courses also, I only mention one single course because that course led to my research project also later. So the next paragraph was is my hook of my statement of purpose, which is the research project I pursued under the supervision of this professor who taught me this course, which was a very interesting course that I liked. And I devote one single paragraph to this hook because I submitted a paper to the Chemical Engineering Science Journal, and I also presented this work at a American Physical Society Division of Fluid Dynamics conference in the US. So this was a part of my SOP which I wanted the admissions committee to focus on in the first minute itself. That's why I wrote this in the first page of my statement of purpose. And this is the hook of my application. Now, all of you should note that similar to Dr. Raj, I had not published any work in any journal during my application, but I had submitted this work, which got eventually accepted after 2, 3 months. And the way for the admissions committee to validate that you have actually submitted this work is if you get an endorsement from a professor that you have actually worked on this project, or if you have a portfolio website where this work is submitted. So if you see, there is a footnote here at the bottom where I have mentioned about this work and I have mentioned a URL. This URL directly redirects the audience to my portfolio website where I have mentioned the initial draft of this paper after taking permission from my professor. So this way people can believe in my hook more readily. In the next paragraph, I mention about some of my experiences in the field of automotive engineering. You can see this is completely disconnected from fluid mechanics. But the way this is connected to my thread is that the work that I did at this international internship in Germany was to predict the dynamics of a suspension system. And where do you see this line? You see it in the thread, understanding complex dynamic systems. So you can see how different paragraphs are directly linked with my thread. This is what I wanted to give people who are reading my SOP an impression that whatever you're reading, it's not a series of disconnected events, but all of these events are linked together by a common thread, which is running throughout my SOP that um, I'm very passionate about working on this field of complex dynamic systems and analyzing these systems, whether it's a fluid mechanics problem or it's a problem in automotive engineering. So this is what I mentioned here. Then I reiterate the point that I cemented my understanding of this area by undertaking large-scale industrial projects. And this is again not related to fluids at all, but this is impactful because I submitted this work at a very prestigious journal. Uh, and then my advisor also endorsed me for this in his letter of recommendation. So I would say there was this hook in my application, and the later paragraphs are not completely related to my passion, but they align with my thread really well, and they have some impactful points interspersed within that. Okay, so next comes my supporting cast, which is paragraph number this and this paragraph, where I mention about um, some course projects that I did with a team of people, which also includes a socially relevant project. Someone has asked in the chat whether we can include projects we did as a part of NGO work. Yes, you can definitely if they are adding a lot of impact. Here, I worked on a project which was related to eliminating the practice of manual scavenging prevalent in India. It was a very impactful project, and I wanted to mention it in my SOP somewhere. And I devoted a lot of lines to it because I thought this was very impactful and people will really like this. So this was the supporting cast of my project, which I divided into two paragraphs. So up until now, you can see my story is sounding very coherent. Initially, I was a student who got admitted in a college. I found one course fascinating. I pursued uh, that course under the supervision of a professor, and not just that, but I approached this professor for a research project that turned out to be very good for me, and I developed an interest in research. I submitted my work in a journal, and I also presented at a conference in the US. Parallelly, I did a research internship, and I also worked on two industrial projects in the field of complex dynamic systems. So your SOP should be written in a way that you should be able to explain it to someone as a part of a story. Try explaining it to someone in your family, just to get an understanding whether your story makes sense. I read a lot of SOPs where the writing is so scattered that it takes a lot of time for us to create a story out of it, and for that story to emerge. It is hidden somewhere underneath. Students also tend to write more personal experiences, that I was stuck in this project for 5 months and I worked very late at night, and finally I got the result and I had tears in my eyes. All of these things, they are not really needed to be written in your SOP. You have to be more professional and to the point, because you don't have a lot of space. You have maximum 1200 words, and within that you have to fit all the things uh, which are more impactful. Then I mention about the courses that I have taken as a part of my college work, and all of these courses are linked to the thread. I also mention about the GPA, and then I mention about some of the work that I have done as a part of my teaching assistantship. The reason I mention this is because I wanted to apply for a PhD. And when you're applying for a PhD, people look at a combination of your research skill sets as well as your teaching skill set. So I wanted to demonstrate through this document that I am equally good at both. And then finally, I mention about the people at MIT that whom I want to work under the supervision of. And I had read some of their papers, and I wanted to make this paragraph look more personalized. And this is something I would highly recommend to all the students in this webinar. Whenever you're writing about professors, research groups, make sure that you read some of their papers, and try to write something which other candidates will not write. Try to find something in the paper which you find interesting, something which, if the professor reads, they'll understand that, okay, this person has actually read my paper and they're really interested. And then also take note of these footnotes, which I have written at the bottom of my SOP, which is very closely linked to the portfolio website as well. So just to summarize, I start with the thread. The thread is something which is there in multiple paragraphs. It's like a common gel which links all my paragraphs together. Then I move deeper into my hook, which is the journal paper and the conference presentation. I have some industrial projects which are again related to my thread. Then I have some supporting cast, which includes my teaching experience, and finally I end up with a pitch to my to the university to convince them that why am I suitable candidate? Why should you choose me to this particular university? So with this, I will stop sharing my screen, and now Dr. Sreedath will share his SOP with all of you.
Thank you, Rajat. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yeah.
So likewise, what Raj and Rajat was showing, I'll split my SOP into different sections, and I'll show you what my hook was, how did I convert some of my confusions or weaknesses into strengths. So I'll divide my SOP into 4 parts. The first page I'll divide into 2. Second page also I'll divide into 2. So what you are seeing right now is the first half of the first page. So someone was asking me in the chat about introduction section as well. I started with a very simple introduction. I said, I am Sreedath Panat, a final year dual degree student currently studying at IIT Madras, and I wish to pursue PhD in this department. And then, so that is making clear who am I, where am I applying from, and what is my intention with this application. And then I just mentioned what is my broad area of interest and what is my particular area of interest. So this sets the tone for what would be the thread of my SOP looking like for the rest of this essay. So my thread is clearly in manufacturing, and particularly in these couple of fields. And the reason why I mentioned these couple of fields is also not just because I was interested in this. I was vaguely interested in this, but I did not know too much about either of these, manufacturing, process control, or fabrication. But the name of the professors that I mentioned in the second last paragraph of my SOP, their research was heavily focused on these two areas. So that was another reason why I mentioned this particular interest. Then the second paragraph I used as a transition paragraph because I did not want to jump directly into my undergraduate experience. Before that, I wanted to spend a little bit time on why did I even opt to take mechanical engineering, because in the US, undergraduate students have an option to pick the branch, although that is not the case in India. But I thought it will be a good idea to kind of rationalize my decision. So I wrote about how physics and maths was my favorite subjects in high school, and then engineering came as a natural choice, and how I ended up in mechanical engineering. So this transition paragraph honestly is not my favorite paragraph, mainly because I find it to be a bit of force fitting, but I don't see any other way around. I'll show you one more paragraph in the later part of the SOP where I feel like, again, there is a force fit. But you can make the transition paragraph as small as possible from the introduction to your undergraduate studies. So make it maybe 3-4 sentences so that it's not taking up too much space. But basically, it's a transition from the place where you mention your thread to the place where your first hook starts. So my first hook was my first industrial internship at Caterpillar. And before directly jumping into that internship, I also mentioned one of the courses that I really, really liked during one particular semester. It was kinematics and dynamics of machinery. And I mentioned how it really was a bridge into this internship, because whatever I learned in that course was directly being used in the internship. So I have seen many students just mention about what they did. I did this, I did this, I did an internship here, etc., without showing the tangible impact. So in my case, I did not have a research paper at the end of this internship. I did not have a letter of recommendation at the end of this internship. So the only tangible thing was the work that I did, which actually improved the performance for the whole team there. So I created a Python code base, which significantly improved the way they perform certain optimization tasks. So that is what I mentioned in the last sentence. If this sentence was missing, this whole paragraph would have been like a paragraph of any student who does a normal random internship. But just because of the presence of that tangible output from the internship, the value of it increases manyfold. So if you look at what this paragraph is all about, it's a strong hook because it is kind of, it's not directly related to manufacturing, but it's almost there. And there are also supporting elements, like it shows that I'm skilled in programming. It shows that I can work in teams, etc. Then in the second half of my first page of the SOP, I had a few more hooks and supporting elements. So one of the next things were, I mentioned about a DAD internship. So the impact of this DAD internship was that it was in Germany, and DAD is like a very selective program. So Dr. Rajat had also mentioned about his DAD internship. The problem for me was that my DAD internship was not at all related to my field of application. It was related to something like computational modeling of thermomechanical aspects about a nuclear fusion reactor. So it was not at all related to manufacturing. It was not even experimental. It was just computational stuff. So I did not want to spend any time talking about the exact nature of the work, but rather I wanted to talk about how this internship inspired me to pursue research after my graduation. So I consider this paragraph as a kind of like a not very strong hook, but it is a hook because it shows my ability to conduct research. It shows my ability to collaborate with people from different parts of the world, from different cultures. And it's also a good supporting element because it shows that research is something that I am really interested in doing, because I clearly mentioned that this is the time when I decided to pursue my PhD. And the other thing was that I actually did not have a letter of recommendation with this professor, because I myself decided not to take the LOR. I met him barely 4 or 5 times during the internship. I was working more with a PhD student, and it did not make any sense to me to take LOR from a PhD student because it would have very less value. And it also did not make sense to take LOR from the professor because he had not met me that much. So I rather decided to take, although he is the biggest name in that field, probably in the world, I decided to take it from an assistant professor at my university. So that was about this particular paragraph. So this is how you can, very smartly decide which aspects of your work you want to utilize in terms of technical details, which aspects of your projects or research work or internship you want to mention without mentioning the technical details. So here I did not mention any technical details. Then I mentioned a couple of conferences. The first conference was actually a supporting element. It was not a hook because it was in machine vision. It was not directly related to manufacturing. But the fact that this was an international conference and it was very selective, our work got accepted, we presented everything, and the professor whom I mentioned here was also one of my strongest recommenders. So this conference was, although it was not a direct hook related to my thread, which was manufacturing, it was a strong supporting element. And no way I could not have mentioned this because I was so proud of this work. I was also very happy, and although so initially I was a bit confused, like should I write about this machine vision thing in a manufacturing application or not? But then ultimately I decided to mention it because when someone sees this, they will only judge me in a positive way. They'll not feel like, oh, this guy also is talking about machine vision in a manufacturing application, because I have other hooks which are directly related to manufacturing. So I have no problem mentioning a few supporting elements. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is because many of you in the chat had mentioned that your internship or your work experience are unrelated to your domain of application. Should you mention about that? Of course, you can mention about that, but the technical details you can decide how much to include and how much to not include based on your discretion. Then I had a journal publication, which was actually not published. It was at that point just submitted. It was a strong hook because it was a good paper directly related to manufacturing. However, the reason why I mentioned even the journal name is because there is always a good chance that it will get rejected, and it did get rejected from the journal later, and actually it got published much later. But the reason why I wanted to mention the journal name is because it adds much more credibility. And my recommender was also mentioning this in the LOR, which I knew. So I wanted to mention the journal name, or even if this was a upcoming publication. Someone mentioned in the chat that they have 4 upcoming publications. Should they mention it in SOP and CV? You should definitely mention, because upcoming publication is just the final outcome. You might have spent months or years for those publications, right? To even take it to the level of manuscript. So you should 100% mention it and mention your upcoming publications as separate paragraphs in SOP, and as either as publications subsection in the resume, and in the bracket write under preparation or under submission. Then, so this was my first page. So first page barely had a couple of hooks. It had a couple of supporting elements. It mentioned the thread, and there was a transition paragraph from the thread to the undergraduate studies. In the second page, I mentioned about so this is the first half of my second page. I had 2 strong hooks. One was another international conference in London. This was also directly related to manufacturing in a certain sense. So that's the thing, right? So here you have to, sometimes you will feel like, oh, how is this even related to manufacturing? This sounds like something completely different, because you may have done some simulation and you may feel like you have not even done anything directly related to manufacturing. But let's say you can find a good application for this in the manufacturing. You can definitely mention that. So that is what happened to me in this project. So it was like it was a simulation of a small rolling element bearing, and the concepts that I used more was from physics. So a concept called Lyapunov exponent, which I learned from my minor in physics, was directly borrowed here, and we could do some very good work. But then the reason why this was connected to manufacturing is because such small rolling element bearings are used in micro machining, and they rotate really fast. And when it rotates so fast, it can cause resonance, and then this can cause abrupt machine tool breakage or something like that. So that's the reason why this was directly related to manufacturing. But to even pitch it this way, you have to think. Otherwise, you will think like, oh, this sounds like a computational project. How is this related to manufacturing? And you know what, when I applied to CMU, I was applying for a computational modeling position. And there I did not focus on the manufacturing aspect of this project. Rather, I focused on the computational aspect of this project, and I got admit there as well. So this is how you can actually show different phases of the same project, right? So a project is like you can think of it like a cube. It has different phases: computational, experimental. Just the fact that it is a research, the fact that you collaborated with some big person, and depending on what the other person wants to see, you can show that phase. So you rotate the cube, which is your project, and show the corresponding phase. So that is how you align different projects which has different aspects into one single thread. Then I had obviously my master's thesis, which was directly related to manufacturing. So this conference paragraph, I really liked because somehow it came to my mind that, oh, this very nicely connects the reason why I took the minor, because my minor was in physics. So it did not make any sense that, oh, I'm taking physics as my minor, I'm doing a bunch of computational projects, and then I'm saying that I'm interested in manufacturing for my PhD. So how does all of this come together? It sounds three distinct things, completely disconnected things, right? But this is how I could connect everything somehow. And it was a good connection. People liked it. In my master's thesis, it was directly related to manufacturing, but the problem was that I did not have a publication at that time based on this work. So it was just a work that was done. But the other good thing was that this was a work done in collaboration with an industry, with a company in Chennai called Chennai Metro. So we were doing a bunch of simulations, but at the same time, we were also testing whatever we were designing and simulating on actual machines at Chennai Metro. And they gave us feedback. So it was like a very nice industry plus academia collaboration. It was like a big project. And this was also kind of, recommend, like one of my master recommenders who was my master's thesis guide. He also wrote this in a very strong way in his LOR. So overall, even if this did not end up in anything tangible, I could make a strong hook out of this by weaving a very nice story. And this aspect of industry plus academia collaboration, I also talk about in one of the next paragraphs in what I want to do next. So this is the last section of my SOP. So just look at this, how I conclude. This is very interesting. So in these three paragraphs, I don't talk about any specific project. So I would say 30% of my SOP, which is this, has nothing technical or nothing very specific. So here I talk about my vision, which is like connecting my thread to the pitch that I make to the to the university. So these three paragraphs are a combination of what is my thread, which is manufacturing, and what is my pitch to the university, like what am I proposing. So here I mentioned that my vision is to create an ecosystem where industry and academia work hand in hand for solving complex challenges in the manufacturing domain. And why does it make sense? It's because it's coming from my own experience. In the previous paragraph, I had mentioned about my master's thesis project, which was directly related to an industrial plus academic collaboration. And then I spent one small paragraph mentioning the professors whom I was interested to work with. And if you remember from my first paragraph, these two professors were working directly in computational fabrication and manufacturing process control. So that was one reason why I mentioned that as my specific interest. I would have mentioned another specific interest if the professor that I were interested in was slightly different. So it's not like people who are applying for masters or PhD, they know exactly what to mention as their specific interest. Nobody knows. Like I first of all did not even know what exactly is manufacturing process control. I knew vaguely, of course, but I was pretty sure I did not know it very well. And that is completely okay. Even if some of the toppers from your college, they pretend as if they know exactly what they want to do, I can guarantee that they have absolutely no idea what they want to do in their life, because they're also figuring out just like you. So don't worry about not knowing exactly what is your threat. If you don't know what's your threat, you can make it. And this is also important, right? So professors, when you mention 2 to 3 professors, someone was asking in the chat, oh, does it make sense that my interest is aligning with multiple professors? Of course, you can have multiple professors with whom you may be interested to work with, just like how a professor is scouting for different candidates, and they may not even pick you even if you say you are interested to work with them. Maybe they don't have funding. Maybe they only plan to take one student. Maybe they have already decided whom to take, because they have collaborated with some other research group in Europe, and they would like to take some student from there for PhD. Who knows, right? So you cannot put all eggs in the same basket. And then the final paragraph is like a statement of not about what makes MIT great. I should not be praising MIT too much. Maybe I can spend 1 or 2 sentences maximum, because everyone, like, people know that MIT is a good university, so they don't want to hear that from you. Just praising them is not going to make them feel good about you, but rather mention like what is the values and what is the thing that you can bring to the MIT's ecosystem. Why would they benefit by having you in their department or in their research cohort? So that's what you should mention in the last paragraph. I had also done one more thing, which was like summarizing my accomplishments. So I have been able to demonstrate my research aptitude through my prior works at IITM, which has culminated in 2 conference papers, one awaiting acceptance and a journal paper in review. So this is the reason why I mentioned this is because just in case if people have forgotten what they read in the previous paragraphs, I just wanted this one sentence to serve as a reminder, because they are reading so many SOPs. They may have completely forgotten what they just read. So I just wanted to make sure that that was not the case. So this was the overall structure of my SOP. So if you really look at it, just to reiterate in 30 seconds, I started with a very simple intro paragraph. It was not even a paragraph. It was just 2-3 sentences. Very simple, nothing fancy. Some of my friends had mentioned how their interest in Formula One racing led them to take mechanical engineering. I mean, it worked out really well. He graduated from MIT, but personally, I feel like a straightforward introduction is good enough. People will take you seriously also this way. Then talked about a few of my hooks and figured out a way to connect some of my unrelated things as supporting elements. And then in the last page, and then I had 2 to 3 strong hooks in between. And the last page, second half of last page, was entirely dedicated to pitching myself to the department. And when I applied to CMU, it was completely different. I pitched myself as a computational specialist, where I focused on the exact same project, because I cannot make up new projects, right? I have only worked on so many projects, but I showed the computational aspects of those projects and mentioned why I am an expert at computation. So this is how exactly you can also apply to different departments. You don't have to worry about that. Now, if you are starting to write your SOP, of course, you have to have a thread, right? So the thread can depend on university. So one of the reasons why I decided manufacturing as my thread at MIT was MIT had this thing called Laboratory for Manufacturing and Productivity, LMP. So I felt like, oh, my profile kind of fits really well here. I have a good GPA. I have international research internship. I'll have good LORs. I have publications. So might as well just pitch myself as a manufacturing specialist. Honestly speaking, I had no interest in manufacturing. My interest was in other things. But if I pitch myself as a, let's say, micro, nano, engineering guy or something like that, I probably would not have gotten admit, because there is nothing to show for that. So my plan was I will try to pitch myself with my strengths. And then based on what admit I get, I can talk to any professor and convince the professor to take me into their lab. And that is exactly what happened to me. Like my PhD ultimately had nothing to do with manufacturing, or I would say not much to do with manufacturing. So this is something that you can do. One thing I forgot to mention is for master's students, instead of mentioning 2 or 3 professors' name, you can mention 1 or 2 professors' name, but mention the electives or programs in which you're really looking forward to in the department. Also, definitely do mention what you wish to accomplish after your master's, and also mention why you wish to do master's. So it's very important to do that. I had mentioned PhD is kind of obvious. People can definitely mention, oh, I want to become a professor. It's like, and it's very likely also, like people will believe you. But if you're applying for masters, you would like to have you should definitely have a story to back up your reason for pursuing masters. Now, I'll skip these parts because we have very much in detail covered this. The only thing is, like, see, people were asking, can we use ChatGPT for checking English grammar, everything? Please don't do that, because there are so many words: tapestry, delve, embark, underscore, then leverage, as you can see here. There are so many, maybe there are 10 or 15 words that ChatGPT uses very, very frequently, that even if you have written something manually, Unfortunately, if some of these words end up in your SOP, people might judge that it's written using AI. Somehow it has become like that. So even I would even say, take one step ahead and try to not use some of these words, because it may make your SOP sound a bit like Chat GPT. And there is also this tool called Quillbot AI detector, in that you can copy paste your article. It can tell you exactly what percentage of your text is written using AI. And I mean, it's a free tool. I'm sure MIT or these universities have access to even better tools, and I'm pretty sure something they will have in their pipeline of analyzing the applications. So the conclusion is that have a very strong story in which you are not shy to pitch yourself, in which you are not shy to upsell yourself. It's very, very important that you are not portraying your weaknesses, or you are shy to talk about your dear projects just because it's not published. Departments are trying to attract the best talent. You should try to attract the best department. So yeah, these are the 4 different elements, right? Thread is the main vision. Hook is the strong points which are directly related to your main vision. Supporting cast is indirectly related to your main vision. So for example, my German internship, the technical aspects were completely unrelated to my thread, but the fact that it was a research internship, that made it a supporting cast. And the final pitch is what would you propose to the department? About the value that you will bring there. So all these 4 components will make a very strong SOP. I'll take so today we won't be going till 8:30 because we have to wrap up earlier. So we have something called Long Term Mentorship program. So the phase 1 I won't cover today because it's currently not available for 2025 applicants. We have something called phase 2, but very limited number of students we can take right now. We won't have ability to take all of you, but just email us if you have a compelling case or profile. We can consider, but it's a high time right now, so I don't want to spend too much time here. I'll skip all of this because right now we don't have phase 1. Last year, a lot of students actually ended up getting incredible admits. So that's the only reason why we have figured out, oh, this is actually a good thing that we are doing, and we really like the final outcome. We also have something called Scientific Machine Learning Program. This is something where we help students transition to ML research. This has nothing to do with applications, but many students who wish to work with us long term without having these application deadlines in mind also take up scientific machine learning. In fact, by September 13th, we had submitted around 4 or 5 papers to scientific machine to ML NeurIPS workshop. It's still awaiting acceptance. I don't know how many of the papers will get accepted. It's a very selective conference and workshop, but the outcome was basically from the scientific machine learning bootcamp. And a couple of our students who were actually in higher secondary class, like 12th grade and 11th grade, they're going to MIT on October 12th and 13th to present their work. They got accepted for a program called MIT URTC, Undergraduate Research and Technology Conference, something like that. So this is a very highly successful program that we are running. So the reason why I'm mentioning about this is because this is not connected with the application deadline. So feel free to reach out to us if you are interested in this. I'll not be sharing the details right now, but if you're interested, I can share the detail through email. But this is the last thing. If you are interested in SciML or LTM or details or anything, just email us. The recording of today's webinar we'll be sharing with all of you through email. We'll be posting it on Visuara's YouTube channel. So you yourself can find it tomorrow sometime. Just go to YouTube and type Visuara, VIZUARA. You will find it there. One last thing we just wanted to mention before closing today's event is about the factor of stress. So one thing I definitely felt was like many of my friends were extremely stressful. You could see that on their face during the months of October, November. They were under a lot of pain. And I have felt, of course, I also felt stressed, but I felt like some people took it to the extreme. Like they were overthinking, they were gaining weight, they were under a lot of pressure. So I just felt like you just need to focus, like think about what have you done, forget all the noise. What have you done? How can you spin a good story around around your work that you have done. Go through the department websites, find the professors whose work might align with you, and try to pitch a good story. So if you can do this in a focused manner in the next couple of months, you can definitely do it in a relatively stress-free manner, and that's the only thing that we really wish you can do in the next couple of months. So try to be stress-free as much as possible and try to finish things ahead of time. Don't put things till last minute. Just one last anecdote. My MIT application deadline was on December 15th of the time when I was applying, and I put things till last minute. And on December 10th or 11th or something, I forgot the date. There was like a cyclone in Chennai, and there was a power outage, and I could not apply. And then I somehow figured out a way to go home. There was no transportation; it was complete flood. There was no bus, no taxi, nothing. We somehow arranged a transport and reached home, and then I finished my application a few hours before the deadline. So that I really learned a lesson from that. Like, I thought I'll do a better job by using that extra time, but in that process it only stressed me out. And my recommender, eventually one of my LOR recommenders, he submitted the LOR 15 days after the deadline, so it was close to end of December. So just by sheer luck, things worked out for me, but it may not work out for you. So try to do things very proactively. Any last comments, Rajat?
No, I think, and thanks a lot everyone for joining. There are some requests for conducting webinars on LORs. So we will probably conduct that next month. Thanks everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next sessions.
Thank you all.
Yes,
Take care.
thank you everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.